So, day 3 of the World Cup. We really got a mixed bag today. The first match was easily the most memorable match in the whole tournament so far. 10 minutes in and Messi's already getting his first goal of the tournament, and before halftime, Argentina had already seen 3 of their goals be disallowed by the referee. Though, to be honest, they were all fairly disallowed, and that penalty was never a penalty, so they really can't complain. However, they can certainly complain about the second half, because nobody was expecting what came after this. 3 minutes into the second half and Saudi Arabia gets a goal out of nowhere, and just 5 minutes later Al-Dossari gets the goal of the tournament. And honestly, people shouldn't have been so surprised that he could pull off something like this. I mean, just last year this guy was the MVP at the Asian Champions League, so obviously he's got what it takes. And fun fact, if you didn't know this, he was actually loaned out at Villarreal like a few years ago, but he only played 1 match. Still, I think even after those goals, everyone was expecting Argentina to manage to get back into the game, but well, they didn't. Despite getting over 2 expected goals, while Saudi Arabia only got 0.15, and despite getting nearly 70% possession and literally 5 times more shots than Saudi Arabia, they still lost. And if it still hasn't hit you just how unlikely this is, this was only Saudi Arabia's 4th ever win at a World Cup, and previous to all of this, Argentina was on 36 matches without a defeat. Which means that if they had held on for just 1 more match, they would have equaled Italy's record for the most matches without a defeat out of any national team in history. So yeah, that was rough. Anyway, don't believe the people that are telling you on social media that Argentina are out of the tournament already, because well, they're really not. At this point, as long as they win the 2 matches they have left, they will surely be at the top of the group. But still, if they lose just 1, they will have proven those people right, so I don't know. Among all of this, if there's one person that deserves a lot of praise right now, it's Hervé Renard. Sorry to all of the French people that had to listen to that, and honestly, sorry to everyone else, because it seems I just keep butchering these names, so yeah. This guy is just exceptional, and if you know nothing about him, let me just tell you that in 2012, he won the African Cup of Nations with Zambia. Then in 2015, he won the African Cup of Nations again, this time with the Ivory Coast, making him the first coach ever to win 2 of those titles with 2 different teams. And then he still went on to take Morocco to the 2018 World Cup, their first World Cup in 20 years. And now he's already set to make history again with Saudi Arabia. It's really impressive. Regardless, as you might imagine, people on Twitter had a field day just mocking this game into oblivion. But regardless, all of the funniest things I've seen come from this game came from the fans in Qatar. There were these 2 fans literally exchanging shirts in the stands like they had just played the game. There was some Brazilian fan going completely undercover among all of the Argentinian fans and literally flashing his badge to the camera. And then of course, everyone was expecting something like this to happen. The Saudi Arabian fans made sure to do the CR7 celebration in front of the Argentinians, which I'm sure didn't feel too nice. Despite all of that, seeing Herman kinda win the stands with his family while Argentina are struggling so hard for a goal was still probably the most hilarious thing of all, considering the guy has literally scored more goals than any other Argentinian player and still didn't get a call-up. Before the next game even started, Ronaldo still managed to get the headlines for a while, first being mocked for advertising watches on his Instagram page that are literally valued at like 100,000 euros, and then shocking everyone by putting out a statement saying his contract with Manchester United has been terminated. Which eventually also led to news that the Glazers are probably also finally leaving the club. Yeah, Manchester United are in for some big moments. But moving on, Denmark versus Tunisia. Before the game even started, there was already some drama with Denmark coming out with a kit that seemed to have no badges and no sponsors, as they're apparently protesting against the organizers. But on a more wholesome note, at least we got to see Eriksen play another international tournament 528 days after he went down with a cardiac arrest at the Euros. And the cherry on top of the cake, he actually played pretty well. He literally created 5 chances throughout the whole match, which literally makes him the most creative player in the tournament so far. But even though that sounds hopeful, not only did he not get the Man of the Match award, but the game ended in a goalless draw. And in fact, it was the first of 2 goalless draws today, which means this tournament has already had more goalless draws than the previous World Cup. But if you think that means the game was boring, well, it really wasn't. There were 24 shots across both teams today, meaning this was the 2nd game with the most shots so far at the World Cup. Regardless, by the end of the game, it didn't matter if Denmark had more expected goals, or more possession, or that they almost got a penalty in the final stretch of the match, or even that they somehow missed this. Yeah. At the end of the day, both teams went home with 1 point. But if you're wondering who was the man of the match, it was Ahissa Laidwini, which is actually really impressive because he was literally playing in the French 3rd division just like a few years ago. But today was like on a whole other level. I mean, just 2 minutes into the match, he was literally doing this. The second goalless draw of the day was Mexico versus Poland. That one was far more boring when it came to the actual match, but there were a few moments that were really special. I found it really awesome to watch this old lady literally blessing the players on TV despite watching all the way from Mexico. And then, of course, came the penalty. I don't know if you've seen it already, but yeah, Lewandowski missed the penalty, and of course, the man in goal was Guillermo Ochoa. This man is already by far one of the biggest World Cup cult heroes of the 21st century, and still, it just took it to another level once again. I mean, just listen to the reaction of the Mexico fans once he saved the penalty. Yeah, that was pretty cool, but honestly, these kids did it much better. Yeah, but regardless, putting Ochoa to the side for a second, Irving Lozano was incredible today, and honestly, it would have probably been the man of the match. But like I heard someone say, Ochoa is to the World Cup what Mariah Carey is to Christmas. So, of course, it was the one to take the man of the match award. The final match of the day, France versus Australia, and to begin with, we got to see Marcus Thuram make his World Cup debut 24 years after his own father had won the competition. Once the match started, France was unstoppable. Like, literally just 1 minute into the match, I was already telling my girlfriend that France were probably gonna trash Australia. But then, against all odds, Australia scored, and it was an impressive goal. I mean, Matthew Leckie pretty much broke Lucas Hernandez's ankles, and the finish by Craig Goodwin was pretty cool too, especially since it was his World Cup debut. But then in the space of like 5 minutes, Rabiot came out with a goal and an assist, and from there on out, the match was pretty much like everyone was expecting. But speaking of Rabiot, someone has to explain to me why every time I see this guy play for France, he's always so impressive. I mean, I've watched him play for Juventus a bunch of times, and he's pretty much always dreadful. Though to be fair, I've always said that he seems like the kind of player that if someone were to be able to unlock his potential, it would probably be world class. And honestly, at this rate, I wouldn't be impressed if he unexpectedly became one of the players of the tournament. Regardless, even though he's been really good this year, I still think he's not the kind of player that you can rely on. Over in the second half, Mbappé scored, and then Olivier Giroud scored his second goal of the match, settling the scoreboard at a 4-1 end result, and also tying Thierry Henry as France's all-time top scorer, which is really impressive for a player who's been so heavily criticized over his career. I know people are gonna say he got really lucky with Benzema being suspended from the national team for so many years and all of that, but still, he is the all-time top scorer of the French national team. I don't think you realize how hard that is to achieve. And don't use the argument that nowadays players get more matches, because Giroud managed to get to 51 goals in less matches than Thierry Henry. So yeah, that really doesn't apply here. On that same note, it's also really impressive that he managed to get 2 goals out of 5 shots in his opening game, when back in 2018 France literally won the World Cup, and he still went the entire tournament without even getting a shot on target, which was awful. So yeah, it looks like France will be the first to finally break the World Cup curse. I mean, they were literally the first World Cup champions to win their opening game since 2006, and it looks like at this rate, they could be a serious contender for the title. But yeah, this was day number 3 at the World Cup, and if you could do me a favor and just please the YouTube algorithm, either subscribe or click the bell button if you haven't done it already, because pretty much no one has, and it really helps get the videos to pop off once I upload them. So yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.